So Conservation North is one of the organizations that was involved with the Power Forest project, and lately, over the past few years, they've brought a lot of attention to the issue of pellets in British Columbia because of all the forests up there that are being logged for pellets and shipped out by dracs. And so I'm going to ask Rachel, pellets and forests, what's the fuss?
Well, so the theory is there's a lot of waste that comes with forestry. That's a problem in itself. But if you cut a tree with a chainsaw, you get a lot of sawdust. And so if you cut thousands of trees with a saw, then you get a really lot of sawdust. And we used to burn it in beehive burners in BC. And so that was bad. That's a bad idea. If you can think of something to do with that, that's a great plan. So let's not burn it. Let's put it in a dryer and make it into little pellets, and you can burn it in your stove. Super. What a brilliant idea. So you go from the brilliant idea, and then you let the free market take its path. And then it becomes less of a good idea. Because now we have multiple things going on. So if that diagram shows you the risks of when you get your feedstock for pellets from different sources. So if you get it from all the wood that goes into the landfill right here, then there's no risk. It's a great idea. We don't do that at all in BC. We don't extract that resource at all. If you get it from sawdust, then it's really probably an okay idea. But as you go up the chain in the forest, if you start to source it from real trees, then it's no longer waste. And so therefore the fundamental assumption of what you are doing is really not being met. And this is a pellet mill just outside Prince George. And I don't know, some of that looks like sawdust and some of that looks like trees to me. And I said at the beginning that we don't account for the carbon in forests correctly at the international scale. So the international scale says, yes, there's an emission of carbon when we log the forest, but we don't need to worry about it because the forest is going to grow back. So, and fundamentally, in principle, the forest is a very different source of carbon than is fossil fuel. Right? The fossil fuels, we dig them out of the ground and they increase the global carbon pool. They make more carbon on Earth active than was active a minute ago. That is why the fossil fuels have to stop being dug up. They must stay in the ground. Trees, in principle, cycle carbon, and that's okay. As long as you're not cutting trees that actually sequestered that carbon over thousands of years, which we have in British Columbia. So if you log primary forest, you are getting rid of all that carbon, and it will take many, many hundreds of years to cycle back to neutrality. The World Carbon Accounting System ignores that. They ignore that fine detail of time, since we only have minus 20 years to deal with climate change. We certainly don't have time going forward. But anyway, we need to deal with it now. We don't have 200 years to wait for neutrality. And so that is the problem with pellets. And on top of it, we have incentivization programs that basically push to suck up, to make more pellets. We have global incentivization that forces both Japan and the UK to do this, to make waste. And that's the problem in BC, because we have not, we don't put rules in place. We let the market make these decisions. That's a fantastic cartoon by my lovely partner who's sitting in the back.
So a few years ago, 2 documentaries were made, one by the BBC and one by the Fifth Estate, about how Drax is making pellets from wood taken from big trees around the Prince George area. So you can probably find those to get details on that.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one thing to that last conversation, is that there is a sweet spot for pellets. Right? There is a lot of waste associated with forestry. So if you had a forest management system that was a good one, which we don't, but if you did, let's imagine, then the waste that gets the tops of the branches, the sawdust from that, we should be bringing that into town making pellets, heating our local buildings. Selkirk colleges run on pellets that they get from the Princeton mill. Some of that is a little bit sketchy, dicey in terms of quite where it comes from. But in principle, it's a great thing to do. And when you burn wood for heat, you get 80% efficiency. When you burn wood for electricity, you get 20% efficiency. So it's just dumb to do what we're doing. And we should put things in place to use the waste that we create in BC for a local solution. We don't have to kill the whole thing. We just need to put rules in place to make sure it's done properly.